In this one, I want to talk about diet, and more specifically, 3 foods or 3 types of foods that are making you uglier and also less healthy. So number one, refined sugars. And first I want to talk about the misconception, because people have this idea in their mind that refined sugar is only white sugar. That's false. There's a lot of people promoting refined sugar on YouTube, but sometimes you don't see that because they use words like honey and fruit juice, like even Face IQ is doing now. But the thing is, when we look biochemically and when it comes to outcomes, it's still the same. They're all refined sugars. Of course, white sugar is worse, but they're still all refined sugars. You're taking away the fiber. You're taking away a lot of the things that slow down the metabolism of sugar that would make fructose and glucose not bad for you, basically, in simple terms. So this idea that refined sugar is only white sugar is false. And you need to get that out of your head. And yeah, things like honey and fruit juice, they're still going to spike your blood sugar and your insulin, which is going to give other problems as well. And yeah, don't fall for this mistake. These foods are still going to spike your blood sugar and insulin, which can cause acne and glycation, etc. And it's not healthy for you, and it's going to make you uglier if you do have a tendency for acne. So I would avoid those as much as possible. And by the way, if you want to know everything I do when it comes to diet, more importantly, how I reach all of the micronutrients, including all of the vitamins, all the minerals, protein, amino acids, lipids, etc., then you can join the Skool community. I figured it out how to have a simple diet that reaches all of the micronutrients, so that you have 0 deficiencies. So if you want to check it out, it's the link in the pinned comment. If you want to be as healthy as possible, then yeah, back to the video. So number 2, refined oils. These are a very common source of acne. Pretty much every single time I consume stuff with oil, the next day I have acne. They are really high in omega-6s, and most people already get too much omega-6 compared to omega-3, which is a cause of inflammation. And yeah, most people already get way too much omega-6 anyway, and not enough omega-3, so their priorities would be the opposite of this. And we do have studies showing net positive effects of seed oils, for example, but that's only because they're comparing them to oils that are even worse. For example, trans fats and saturated fats. So when you're comparing stuff to butter, it being better is not that much of a flex because it's a pretty low bar. And these studies don't compare them to whole foods. When they do, the oils become inferior. And the nuance here is that if you already consume enough long-chain omega-3s, either via fish or fish oil or algae oil, then consuming some oils, for example, in the form of extra virgin olive oil, then that would be completely fine. The main problem with the ratio is if you're relying on that ratio for the conversion from ALA into EPA and DHA. In other words, short chain to long chain omega-3s. But if you're not relying on that ratio, and you just consume long chain omega-3s directly, then you can have, for example, some extra virgin olive oil. So that's the nuance that I wanted to include. Number 3, ketogenic diets. So according to the systematic review and meta-analysis, you could argue, oh, it's observational data. Yeah, of course, because we cannot randomize people into low carb versus high carb. Because with randomization, the difference between the groups has to seem identical. So it's easy to do with supplements because it can be a white pill. One can be placebo, the other can be a treatment. But when it's diet, people can see their plate. So you cannot trick people into doing a placebo. So it is observational because that's the best we can do when it comes to this subject. And this is still way better data than, for example, mechanistic data, because mechanistic, we have to rely on animal studies because it's illegal to do that on humans. Unless you're a fascist empire, we cannot do those experiments on humans. It has to be on rats, which is why mechanistic studies are bullshit, because they use rats and they use quantities and formats of foods that are not realistic and they're not reflective of what humans do. So this is the best kind of data we have when it comes to low carb diets versus other diets. And the low carb diets, in other words, keto diets, they increase all-cause mortality by around 31%. Do we have data where we see the opposite? Yes, but they don't equate for calories. If you compare ketogenic people that are at a healthy weight compared to obese people on an average diet, then perhaps the ketogenic people are going to be healthier. But when you equate things like BMI and weight loss, then it's very clear that the ketogenic diet has a much higher mortality rate compared to the average. And even from a development standpoint, it's very common in the luxamaxing space and in the black pill to basically recommend only eating raw meat and not eating carbs. But it should be the exact opposite. Lack of carbs, they decrease height development. So you're less likely to reach your genetic potential when it comes to height, because carbs actually increase growth hormone and IGF-1 signaling, which contribute to reaching your height potential. So you actually have a lower chance of reaching your genetic potential if you don't consume carbs compared to if you're consuming. Same thing for facial bones, for example. And it's the exact same pathway, the GH pathway and the IGF-1 pathway. So by cutting carbs, you're actually less likely to develop your bones correctly, including your facial bones and including your height. So this is not looks maxing, this is the exact opposite. Does that mean that you should consume white sugar and do the sugar diet? No, there's an in-between, trust me. Like, the internet is so stupid because the only ideas that ever propagate are ideas that are extremist and that are black and white, but that is not at all what I promote. And also, carbs decrease cortisol. So you'll notice that people that don't consume carbs, they're stressed all the time. And you'll notice that people in the morning, even average people, they're pretty stressed in the morning before they eat. And that's because they don't have any carbs in their system. When you eat, when you consume carbs, you become less stressed. So if you notice, you're probably more stressed in the morning before you eat. And the main factor is lack of carbs. So if you want to be less stressed, you should actually include carbs. Ideally, between 50 to 70% carbs. Carbs should be the main calorie source of your diet. There's a bunch of evidence for that. We have the salivary amylase enzyme. The fact that that enzyme exists is proof that we're completely adapted to consume a bunch of carbs. And also people that consume higher carb intakes, for example, 50, 60%, even more, those populations are more likely to have higher rates of centenarians. So they live longer on average. And all the populations with the highest longevity, they are on average high carb populations. So basically, avoid refined sugars, avoid refined oils, and also avoid low carb diets. And again, if you want to join my school community, it's the first link in the pinned comment. And there I show you what I eat to pretty much hit all of the micronutrients, all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the amino acids, how to have high testosterone naturally, a healthy androgenic profile, a healthy lipid profile. If you want to know how I optimize those things and what the studies actually say, then click the link in the pinned comment and join my school community. And I'm 100% sure that it's going to be worth way more than what you pay for. So join if you want to know how you can actually get this for you and optimize your development, optimize your health, optimize your energy levels, etc., all according to the best available evidence. So yeah, join the school community, link in the pinned comment, and I'll see you inside.